Welcome to Methodical Insights with Julie. Today I would like to talk about the Freedom of Information Act, also known as Foia. U.S. citizens as taxpayers can request records that belong to any federal, state, or local agency because they are taxpayers under the Foia. So you can be charged for a Foia request. Some of the most common types of records that you probably know that are requested under Foia are police records or court records. The media uses Foia to gain a lot of their information. You can be charged for these Foia requests for the processing of those records. Also, non-federal or state or local organizations such as hospitals that receive state funding or your utility companies that receive state or federal funding may be susceptible to the Foia. You can always visit a company's website and see if they do have a process for requesting Foia. You will also see redactions when you get those records back. And some of the redactions will either be the local state authorities or the local authorities that allow the withholding of that information. You also will see some federal exemptions from the guide from the DOJ, the Department of Justice guidebook on Foia. And there are actually 9 exemptions from the DOJ guide and 3 exclusions. So today I would like to talk about what some of those exemptions are, and so you understand the redacted or blacked out information that you're seeing. They do cite the exemption, and then in the letter they should also cite the reason they withheld under that exemption. So the first exemption we have is Exemption 1, which is for national security records. Executive Order 13526 states they may not be reclassified after declassification and released to the public under the proper authorities. This information has not previously been disclosed to the public under proper authority and can be classified or reclassified after receiving a Foia request. Information can be marked with appropriate classification levels and the identity of the original authority. Exemption 1 protects the disclosure of information deemed classified to be kept secret under executive order and under the interest of national defense or foreign policy. Exemption 2 is related to internal personnel rules and practices of an agency. There's a 3-pronged test for Exemption 2. Number 1, the information must be related to personnel rules and practices. 2, the information must relate so that these personnel rules and practices are used solely. And 3, the information must be internal. Exemption 3 protects disclosure of records protected under other federal statutes. Some of those may be 385701, which protects the record names and addresses of veterans and their dependents in their claims records. 38 U.S.C. 5705, which protects quality review records, risk management type records. You will see root cause analysis protected under 5705. 38 U.S.C. 7332 protects alcohol, substance abuse, HIV, and sickle cell anemia. 41 U.S.C. 2107 protects contract proposals. 41 U.S.C. 6103 protects the tax information, appropriation funds, or other financial information. Exemption 4 relates mostly to contracts, sealed bids, grants, trade secrets obtained from a person. These requests will take a little bit longer because when you submit a FOIA request for a contract, the FOIA officer is required to send a notification to the contract owner and advise them that there has been a FOIA request submitted and who requested that FOIA request, and provide them the responsive records so that they can tell the FOIA officer if there's any foreseeable harm or trade secrets contained within those records that should be withheld, and they have to make the argument of why it would do their company harm. The FOIA officer then makes their decision to whether or not to withhold that information under Exemption 4. Exemption 5 are inter or intra-agency records. Some of the things that you'll see that they are withheld under is consult corollary. So when they're consulting somebody about business and interest, common interest for the deliberative process, for pre-decisional information or deliberative information in that pre-decisional process, attorney work privileges, attorney-client privileges, and other privileges that could have foreseeable harm. Exemption 6 is a personal privacy interest. So you have to weigh whether or not the private or public interest outweighs one another. Most of the times what you're going to see withheld under Exemption 6 are the names, addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers, date of birth, or other unique identifiers that belong to an individual that is not the requester. Because the disclosure of that information would cause that person an unwarranted breach of their information. Exemption 7 has several parts to it. There are exemptions 7A through 7F, and we're going to take a look at each of these. They're all related to law enforcement or security records. So exemption 7A are for open investigations, and there's a two-part test to that. The information must be pending or reasonably anticipated that the law enforcement proceeding will be happening. 2, it must reasonably cause articulated harm or interference or deference of that investigation. 7B prevents prejudicial and pretrial publicly disclosed information that could impair court proceedings, depriving a person a fair trial. There are two parts to this exemption as well. 1, the trial or adjudication must be pending or imminent. And 2, it must be more probable than not that the disclosure of the information would interfere with the fairness of the proceedings. 7C is like exemption 6, but it's a personal privacy interest in a law enforcement record. So again, you're going to weigh that privacy interest versus the public interest. And most of the time, you're going to see exemption 6 and 7C both used within a law enforcement record together. 7D protects information from disclosure that could identify a confidential source from state, local, foreign, or other authorities that have furnished information on a confidential basis or that has something to do with national security. Exemption 7E protects disclosure of law enforcement techniques and procedures or the guidelines for law enforcement investigations, Homeland Security records, and the guidelines for terrorist attacks pertaining to terrorism. Exemption 7F protects information that could reasonably be expected to endanger the safety or life of any individual. Exemption 8 is related to the examination, operating, or other reports prepared for financial institutions. Exemption 9 protects geological and geophysical information and data maps concerning wells. So what are the exclusions? There are 3 exclusions, C1, C2, and C3. C1 is a possible violation of criminal laws that the individual may not be aware of impending investigations or proceedings. C2 is requested for the party under an informant's name. So in C2, if you request the information under an informant's name, there's an exemption to withhold that information. C3 protects information or records that are for the FBI, counterintelligence, or international terrorism and are classified. So those are the exemptions and what you may see. And again, you could check out your state local laws and your local laws by Googling or searching on the internet, FOIA laws for your state. Sometimes you're going to see your code laws or your statutes from your state cited for those redactions. I thank you for joining me today.